This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. Well, this is a real treat for me, getting to speak with one of my closest friends, one of the best broadcasters, and one of the best attorneys in the business. Now, if someone ever asks you, what do Lawrence Taylor, Rudy Giuliani, Steve Bannon, Anthony Weiner, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Harvey Weinstein have in common, the answer is pretty easy. The answer is their attorney. And I am very, very pleased to be joined by a man that was described by one of the major newspapers in New York as the nice guy lawyer representing America's tabloid villains, the one and only Arthur Aidala. Arthur, how are you, my friend?
Well, I'm great, considering in the list of clientele you did not add Carmine Morano, because I don't want that name in the list of people who I've had to kind of get out of a jam. So I'm very happy about that.
So, I mentioned a few, and people may not believe it, but it really is only a few of the bold-faced names that you've represented over the years. And the New York Times did refer to you in a really nice profile as the nice guy lawyer for America's tabloid villains. When you end up representing someone, whether it's the chief advisor to the mayor of New York City, the former mayor of New York City himself, the former chief counselor of the White House, someone like Alan Dershowitz, or somebody else, do those folks generally come to you, or do you ever go and look for those folks?
No. I mean, they definitely come to me. It's technically unethical for a lawyer in the state of New York. It's different in other states. For example, in the state of New Jersey, if you get locked up for DWI, within 5 days after your arrest, you're going to get like 15 letters from lawyers asking to represent you, because it's okay in New Jersey, where I am also admitted. But in the state of New York, you are not allowed to solicit people. So those folks have all come to me, the folks that you mentioned. But, Frank, I'm going to be honest with you. Well, I'm always honest with you, actually. A lot of cases that are near and dear to my heart are the individuals who no one knows their name, no one knows who they are. I mean, the cases that I really, the two cases I'm the most proud of. One is Billy Rapetti, who was the rigger. That's his official title, on the crane in New York City on 51st Street and 2nd Avenue, which means basically he's in charge of putting up the erector set of a crane on an early Saturday morning, which then collapsed after he complained that he didn't like the plans. And so he called the main architect and the owner and everyone said, I don't like the way this looks. And they said, we don't care. And I asked him, I go, well, what would happen if you said, like, I'm not putting this crane up on this Saturday morning. I'm not raising it, because that's what they were doing. They were making it even higher. He said they would just call someone else and they'd be here in 15 minutes to do my job, and I would just be home. And they raised that crane and it fell. And Mr. Rapetti was actually on the crane. He was able to jump from the crane back onto the building. He broke his leg, his ankle, and his foot. But 6 of his friends died. One of his friends who was on the crane got seriously injured, and then there was a poor woman it was 8:30 in the morning watching TV on a Saturday morning, and the crane fell into her apartment and killed her. The one guy who was on the crane who survived, he actually came into court and testified on behalf of Mr. Rapetti. saying, I'm permanently disabled, but Billy Rapetti did nothing wrong. And the other woman who no one knew, her name was Bridget Harris, whose father had molested her when she was a little girl, and then she found out that her father came back into the picture after being gone for 10 years and was starting to fondle her little niece, and let's say she took matters into her own hands, and she was no longer on this planet. And he met his demise at the hands of his daughter, and we tried that case as well. So, everyone asks me, what's the big case you got? Who's the big name? And I appreciate that, and that's kind of what gives me a little name recognition around the city. But it's common folk who I represent that a lot of times are near and dear to my heart.
It's interesting. You and I have spoken about that Bridget Harris case many times over the years, and I know that it is near and dear to your heart. But I have to think with the Menendez case being thrust back into the news that there are at least a few parallels between that case and the case of the Menendez brothers. And I imagine you have a strong feeling one way or another about whether or not they should be let out of prison at this point. What's your take on the Menendez case?
Well, knowing that the criminal justice system is far from perfect, I have a problem with anyone who's sentenced to life in prison. I really do, because there's just a lot of holes in the system. And I'll be honest with you, Frank, I haven't studied it closely enough, but I can tell you I've studied it closely enough that it deserves a second look. I know, one prosecutor said it definitely deserves a second look. The new prosecutor said, no, I don't think so. Politics plays such a big role in all of this. If you come and bring back from California to New York, Damian Williams, who was the United States Attorney for the Southern District, appointed by Joe Biden, in my opinion, got so caught up with his own ego and his desire to be really to be the president of the United States. You can make fun of Rudy Giuliani for being the U.S. attorney and, being a little bit of an egomaniac to be the mayor. This guy was telling folks he's living his life in a way to be the president of the United States. And, the case against Mayor Adams it's unique. Let's just put it that way. The same way Alvin Bragg's case against Donald Trump is unique. And I don't know, if I was a chief prosecutor, whether it's of the Manhattan DA's office or the U.S. Attorney's of the Southern District, I don't know. I don't think I'd be striving for unique. I would be striving for law and order. I would be striving for the people of the jurisdiction of which I was appointed or elected to defend, to just make people safe. I don't need to go out on a limb, and I don't know how many people are bent out of shape by the fact that when Eric Adams was the Brooklyn Borough president, not the mayor, he got some upgrades on flights, or maybe he got some donations.
We're getting a little off the beaten path when it comes to the Menendez case, but we'll come back to Mayor Adams. I promise. There's a few other items I want to pick your brain on.
Listen, whatever you want. It's your world.
Okay.
I just live in it.
At 30 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. My guest is former Brooklyn prosecutor and noted legal analyst and star criminal defense attorney Arthur Aidala. I mentioned the Weinstein case, Arthur. That's been very much in the news. I know there was a big hearing on this last week. Just give us the latest on that. When is that case expected to go to trial? What's the next step in that whole thing?
I think we're striving to at least bring a bunch of potential jurors up on the 10th or 11th and just bring a bunch of citizens up and say, hey, this is going to be a 4 to 6 week trial.
Of April.
Of April, yes. Who could stick around for that long and who can't? People watch Law and Order and all these shows and you get a whole case and the crime and the solving of the crime and the trial all within like 48 minutes. It's not that way in real life. So you got to call up like 100, 200 people and ask them, like, the first question is, like, who can stick around for, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks?
Right.
Who's got a family member they don't have to take care of, or a little kid or a job or whatever? And then jury selection will be on April 15th. And then, Frank, you got to start off with, like, who's heard about this case. And then once people raise their hand and say they've heard about it, you got to call them in the back and ask them what they've heard, because you don't want them in front of everyone saying, oh, yeah, I heard Harvey Weinstein is the worst guy in the world. Like, you don't want everyone in the jury panel hearing that. And the prosecutors want to hear, like, I think Harvey Weinstein got railroaded. So it takes a while, and then we'll pick a jury. But hopefully around April 22nd, we'll give opening statements. And the trial of the evidence will be about 2 to 3 weeks, closing statements, and then the jury will get it, and, you know, we'll see what happens. But I will tell you one thing, I'm working my tail off because I think, you know, I'm not going to say Harvey Weinstein should win the Nobel Peace Prize for just being a great guy, but some of the things that are it's against him are just it's a little shaky. Let's just put it that way, a little shaky.
You know, I read a day or two ago that he had done this jailhouse interview in which he said that he thinks he has another movie or two left in him. I know a lot of lawyers, especially when there's a forthcoming case, they're very reluctant to have, especially if they have a high-profile defendant, to have that person do any interviews. Was that interview that he did sanctioned by you? Were you okay with that, or did that come as a surprise to you as well?
Well, Frank, that's a great question. You know, at this point, there's so much out there about Harvey. I don't really care if he, you know, speaks his mind. You know, the guy's 72. He'll be 73. Actually, I think on Wednesday, I think St. Joseph's Day, he's going to be 73. And there's nothing he's going to say that's going to hurt his case, because all he's going to say is that anything he did with any of the women who are the complaining witnesses was consensual. So I don't mind him saying that. Yeah, I mean, typically you're absolutely correct. I'm not looking for my clients to be yapping about, you know, their case, but everyone's heard about this. He's been on trial in New York. He's been on trial in California. If he wants to tell the world that he didn't do anything against the law, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where that whole thing goes. And for people that don't know the history and the background, you actually, in a pretty noteworthy, pretty historic appeal, got his first New York conviction thrown out. So now what we're looking at coming up next month, that's a retrial of the charges that were previously thrown out, but that's totally separate from this California case. If folks are just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. My guest is noted criminal defense attorney Arthur Aidala. One thing that seems to have changed a bit from a few years ago when Harvey was on trial in Manhattan is back then that was the height of the Me Too movement. These days, there seems to be such a backlash against the Me Too movement, not just among people on the right either, but people across the board. We now have, a president who was accused of sexual assault. We have 3 mayoral candidates in New York City that were accused of sexual assault. And yet that doesn't seem to be slowing any of those folks down at all. I'm wondering if you think that the change in the country might bode well for Harvey's case in this coming trial.
Oh, it would be naive to say it does not. I mean, when we tried the case 5 years and 1 month ago, basically like February of 2020, right before the word COVID didn't exist. The words coronavirus was starting to percolate, but there were literally people outside the courthouse who were just like absolutely protesting, you know, Harvey's a rapist and conviction and guilty. I was asking the judge to close, even though it was February, and the courthouse in Manhattan, they like cranked the heat up so that they wind up opening up the windows so no one falls asleep. And you could hear people screaming and yelling outside that Harvey should be convicted, and the judge refused to close the windows. That judge now, on a regular basis, is home watching Days of Our Lives as opposed to being in a courtroom. But we can talk about that on another day. That doesn't exist anymore. I mean, everything is kind of like settled down. So I definitely think Harvey will have a better chance this time than he did then. It was impossible. Look, real quick, I walked into the appellate court before the trial started asking for a motion. I submitted a motion to change the venue outside of New York City to anywhere outside of New York City. And when the clerk saw our paperwork and he saw the caption, "People of the State of New York versus Harvey Weinstein, change the venue," he just looked at me as someone I knew. He goes, "Arthur, where do you want us to change the venue to? Mars?" He's like, "Everybody knows about this case. How are you going to find people who don't know about this case?" And it was true. And yeah, I mean, Frank, when we were picking a jury 5 years and 2 months ago, people were telling us they could be fair and impartial. And then we would dismiss them. We would go back and look at their Facebook posts, and they wrote some horrible things. Like, I almost got to convict that dirtbag Harvey Weinstein. This is after they said, "Oh, no, I can be fair and impartial. Wow. I have no personal views about it," and la, la, la. And then we would dismiss them because whatever, we didn't feel comfortable with them. And we did the follow-up and saw how much, there was just so much negative feelings about him. So it's going to be a rough road. But, all you can do is your best. Like it's kind of like if you're running for office. You work on the weekends, you work during the days, you call your friends, you call everyone, you do everything you can. If you win, you're happy. And if you can't, you wake up the next morning, you look in the mirror and you say, "Hey, I did everything I could. It came up a little bit short. Now I'll go on to, I don't know, do something crazy like an overnight radio show."
Exactly. Believe me, I can empathize. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that.
My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
Same question in terms of the change in the mood of the country and sort of an update on the status of the case when it comes to Ghislaine Maxwell. Obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell was an associate of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein never made it to trial. He died before that. She was convicted. You are responsible for that appeal. That's a federal case. What's going on with that situation? And obviously, you're not necessarily appealing to a jury, but, the judges that decide appeals are human too. Do you think that the change away from the Me Too movement will have any sort of an impact on that case?
I mean, I hope so. And going out on a limb, at some point, I don't mean right this moment, but I would hope that President Trump would take a look at this because he actually knows these people. He knew Jeffrey Epstein. He knew Ghislaine. And the fact that there's been so much hype about what Jeffrey Epstein did and everyone who surrounded him and bad things they did to young women. And it was all about men abusing women. And yet there's not one man who's in trouble. It's one woman who's in trouble. And not only, Frank, did she get in trouble, but she was so mistreated during the course of her trial by the justice system, the United States Marshal's Office. I mean, the Bureau of Prisons. I mean, it was horrible. Her lawyers had to beg the judge whether she could eat a granola bar during the trial because she hadn't eaten in days. Because the way they had, by the time she leaves the courthouse and goes back to the MDC and comes back again, she missed the meal and she was falling asleep because she was so thin and she had no sleep. I mean, it was so un-American. I mean, it really was. And I know for a fact President Trump does not feel very comfortable about what happened to her. So I'm hoping that no matter what the three judges in the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, which is the Federal Court of Appeals, does, I'm hoping before he leaves office, President Donald Trump takes a look and says, "This ain't right." You know, he's a guy from Queens. He knows what the world is all about, and the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell's the only one who's, they wanted to sit in jail until she dies. She basically got a life sentence. I could see President Trump not necessarily pardoning her, but saying, "You know what? You don't got to do 20 years. You've already been in for 5 or 6. That's enough. Bye-bye. You can go home."
Speaking of President Trump, there's a lot of attention being paid into his battles with the courts. The president apparently seems willing to defy a judge's order to turn back these deportation flights. Some people are characterizing this as an almost unprecedented, in the modern era, showdown between the executive branch and the judiciary. How do you see this playing out, Arthur?
Well, I got to tell you, Frank, it makes me very uncomfortable. It really does. If the checks and balances of our system fall apart and we don't respect that, we're in trouble. And I don't say this lightly, but it's just the truth. The judiciary, when this country was founded, was the branch that was really supposed to cause the least amount of trouble, because it was the branch that doesn't have the power to enforce whatever they say. It's just like a judge says something, the Supreme Court of the United States says something, and it kind of dies there if people don't acknowledge it. And what we've done throughout the years is the executive branch has acknowledged it. Congress has acknowledged it. They said, okay, laws we've passed are unconstitutional. The Supreme Court, those 9 judges, said it's unconstitutional, so we can't do this. If all of a sudden the executive branch goes, "Yeah, I know they said we can't do this, but we're going to do it anyway," well, Frank, we're in for a world of hurt. So I really hope that if the executive branch doesn't get what they want, if the courts rule against them, they respect that ruling, because if they don't, I guess then you have a constitutional crisis, and the country that we know and we love and the way it runs is really in jeopardy.
It was reported that you were being considered to be the U.S. attorney appointed by President Trump. Ultimately, they went in another direction. Are you disappointed that you didn't get the opportunity to do that, or are you not at all thinking about it? Well, what's your take? Do you look back at that opportunity with a sense of regret? What's the story?
Well, Frank, I'm always honest with you. It was exactly like a month that I was up for consideration. It was from right around my birthday, December 1st, and then we found out right around January 6th that it was not going to happen. And it was a great month. It was a lot of fun. I have no problem saying it was a total ego trip. A lot of people were kissing my butt a little bit. It was fun. It was really fun. It would all of a sudden be you owned a radio station for 5 minutes.
Right.
It was fun. But when I found out I wasn't going to get it, it felt like 2 cinder blocks fell off my shoulders, because it would have really been life-altering in so many ways. I mean, in so many ways. From my law firm to my family, from my wife and kids to my parents. It really would have just changed everything. So it was nice to be in the mix, but it was a relief. I must say that was the biggest feeling when I found out that I didn't get it. Was a feeling of relief.
Yeah, I totally can empathize. I've been in similar positions. I get it. And I know it's late. You've been very generous with your time. Before I let you go, though, I listen to your radio show every night. You do it on a terrific radio station, AM 970 in New York, that I used to work at, and it's a great audience and a great group of people there. but it's a little bit of a different role that you're playing, being the host of the show, than it has for the last 25 years of you being a guest, first as a newsmaker and then as a legal analyst. Have you found that adjustment challenging at all? Because you are really flexing a little bit of a different set of muscles.
No, I actually think it makes it easier because I kind of know what I want when I'm a guest. And look, I know, as you do, Frank, there are certain guests where you could just introduce them and let them go and they'll do their thing. And then there are other guests where you have to kind of lead them along.
Yeah, yesterday, by the way, I was talking about your interview with Goose Gossage, which definitely falls into the first category.
It was great. I mean, I just had to say, ladies and gentlemen, Goose Gossage, and I shut up for 10 minutes and he just went nuts, which was wonderful. And then there were the other guests who, quite frankly, I don't know if it's stage fright is the right word, but my producer, Joan Pelzer, will say, I spoke to this person. They were great. I pre-interviewed. They're going to be wonderful. And they get on. I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, Frank Morano. Like, Frank, so what do you got to say? Hello, Arthur.
Yeah, I have been there, my friend.
And I'm looking at Joan like, you told me these people were great. Like, what happened? And then, we'll hang up, and she'll look at me like, I'm so sorry. I don't know, like, when we were not live, they were fantastic. So, but the thing is, Frank, I have to cross-examine people on a very regular basis, whether it's in my office, just figuring out whether it's going to be a good witness or not, or whether it's on the stand in front of a jury. So I could usually cross-examine a guest and just pull answers out of them. So there haven't been too many duds. I mean, you listen to the show. I mean, of course, there's a couple of duds here and there, but for the most part, people rise to the occasion. It's amazing how many people love the microphone. I mean, you're on at 1 a.m, 2 a.m, 3 a.m, and people will still, rearrange their lives to come on with the great Frank Morano.
Well, who can blame them? Arthur, I will let you go in a moment. A final question is, I've been seeing you a lot on CNN, and we have CNN on one of the screens here at the studio, and we catch the replay of a show that you're frequently on at night. You were obviously a fixture on Fox News Channel for a long time as a legal analyst there. Culturally, is it a very different vibe at CNN versus Fox News, or is it kind of the same league that you're in there? Explain to me the difference or the similarity of doing stuff at CNN versus doing it at Fox News.
Well, I compliment you because that's a spectacular question, and even my own family hasn't really asked me that yet. I was at Fox News during the glory days. I really was. And as well as their ratings are and their money is or whatever, it's a different world. I was there when Roger Ailes was there, who was the founder of the Fox News Channel. And it was, I don't care, conservative, liberal, whatever. It was a blast. I mean, it was, Frank, it was so much fun at the Fox News Channel. I'm talking about in 2004, 5, 6, 7, because 9/11 is what put them in first place. Before 9/11, I guess it was CNN was in first place, but 9/11 put them in first place. I got there in 2004, and they had just kind of established being the leader in news. And Geraldo Rivera, Shepard Smith, Megyn Kelly, even O'Reilly, it was, we had a blast. I mean, Geraldo had a bar. It was in his contract. He had a bar in his office. And Kimberly Guilfoyle, I mean, we just had a blast. We had so much fun. And, especially when I represented Lawrence Taylor, I had to go to other stations to, do interviews for my cases. And the funny part was, Fox is known as this conservative place, so you would think the studios and the people around there would be all uptight. And where the liberal stuff was, NBC, would be all loosey-goosey. It couldn't be further from the truth. The NBC was all uptight. They took my coat. They ironed it. Yes, Mr. Aidala. Sit down, Mr. Aidala. We'll do your makeup, Mr. Aidala. Whereas at Fox, we were playing the Rolling Stones and dancing at 7 o'clock in the morning. So, but when I go on any of these stations, Frank Morano, I do the best to be myself, to tell the truth, what I think. And I'm kind of just like you. I take a page from your book. I'm nice to everyone, and everyone's kind of nice to me. So it kind of works out. But there's a little bit of a different vibe, about politics. I'm not a righty or I'm not a lefty. I'm a whatever makes sense. And that's how I go, man. That's how I roll, Morano.
I love it. I love it, my brother. All right. I'll let you get some sleep. Thank you so much for staying up late with us. It's been too long since we did this on the air.
Yeah. I'm hoping Barney Miller's on right now. On a little,
I'll let you go.
All right.
Go.
Listen, God bless you, and I hope Carmine gets a good haircut, and don't leave your wallet in the barbershop.
All right. Give your mom a hug for me. I love you all.
Always. God bless. Thank you, right.
Take care. The great Arthur Aidala. If you want to comment on any portion of our discussion, feel free to give me a call, 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.